Okay, so it's time for another update for Project Underdog. I have driven the car 270 something kilometers. I'm stuck in traffic. I don't know why I started recording here. So the big update is that in 270 kilometers of hard driving, the engine and the car have not fallen apart. So that's the good news. Everything else is bad news. No, seriously, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of issues I detected. And now the first thing we're going to talk about is totally not important, but you know, for the sake of fun. It's MPG. I just came back from a gas station. I did a full tank, drove around another full tank and calculated, and I have the exact number I'm going to put on the screen. I just did the numbers briefly in my head, but it is around 15 liters of gas for 100 kilometers of driving. So that is this MPG, which for a turbo car, old car, no variable valve timing, no nothing. I mean, a relatively old engine design from the 90s together with a custom turbo setup is really, really impressive. And that really credit for that goes to, of course, the modern ECU AEM technology and the wideband sensor, which keeps the car both powerful and also frugal, which is, I have to say, really impressive. I used to have worse MPG from time to time with the bike carbs. If you drove it really hard, the MPG was worse and you had like half the power. So MPG, really impressive for what this is. That's one. Number two is I wanted to test horsepower to go on a dyno, but I could not because the only dyno in my city has been sold. The next one is around 300 kilometers away. I do not want to go 300 kilometers away from the safety of my tools and the garage with this car yet. So I don't think it's ready for such a long road trip, so no dyno. Instead, I took my trusty phone dyno, and the app is called Perf Expert. I used this with my bike car build, and I compared it with actual dyno numbers, and the app was usually 3 to 5 horsepower within what the dyno would say. So the app is accurate. I tried it again this time. It gave me really big horsepower figures, but I'll explain everything very soon. The app was not as accurate this time, but what I got most consistently is around 230 horsepower, which is honestly more than I think the car actually has, but I have cheated because all of these have been done soon after the car was fired up and the intercooler and everything else was not heat soaked. So we have around 200 horsepower. You might be wondering, how is that possible with only 7 to 8 psi of boost? Well, it's possible because this car is not doing 7 to 8 psi of boost. It's doing a full bar of boost, 14 psi, and I thought it's 7 to 8 psi because I'm looking at a digital dash and then all the boost kicks in, and then I'm looking always at the road and I could never actually see the number, but I did discover that I'm doing 14 psi of boost when I logged with the laptop for the first time, and I saw 14 psi consistently at max as the max boost on the logs, and I was like, okay, that explains why it feels as fast as it is. And basic physics tells us that if you take a naturally aspirated engine and give an additional bar of boost into it, you should double the horsepower number. Now 116 horsepower, I believe, is the stock of the 4AFE second generation that's in this car, plus 1 bar of boost equals around 230-ish horsepower. So it is very possible that the Perf Expert app is pretty close to the actual power that this car is making. Also, as you can hear, I have fixed the blow-off valve. Let's hear that a bit better. There we go. I have fixed the blow-off valve. It was a problem with a vacuum connection. The connection that I put into the blow-off valve does go to the intake manifold. It's right there on the intake manifold, but it doesn't actually connect to the intake manifold. It connects somehow through some internal passage to in front of the throttle body. Doesn't matter. I switched it, blow-off valve works immediately. I go fast bits blow-off valve, which is really nice. You can make it pretty loud, you can make it not so loud, it's fine. Now, that's the really good stuff. There's more good stuff, but now this brings us to the issue. And what I'm going to show you right now is how we're driving at this very moment. And as you can see, I'm driving without my engine lid. You might be wondering why. Well, that's because I want to see if it's possible to keep temperatures in check by providing the intercooler with as much airflow as possible, because I have discovered, and there's no surprise in this because the setup is stupid, there's really no good airflow through the intercooler, so I decided to see what happens if we give it better airflow. The stock setup which I put in was just put the airflow in the engine bay. It's pretty much obstructed by the engine lid. And after a lot of hard driving through the mountains, even not so much hard driving, after like 15 minutes of hard driving, it is hot these days, really hot, but still we get intake air temperatures of around 70 degrees Celsius, which is absolutely horrible and far too hot, and it creates knock risks and a bunch of things that we do not want. So now I'm driving without the engine lid. I'm doing moderate speeds, nothing really special. And already after about 15 minutes of driving, again, really hot day, about 36 degrees Celsius today, pretty nasty. And now I'm doing a lot of stop and go traffic, and I'm seeing 60 degrees Celsius intake air temperatures, which is honestly a lot better. I'm seeing if my camera is overheating because it's right down the glass, and a few moments ago it overheated and I couldn't record. But if there's a cut in the video, the camera overheated. Anyways, we are seeing 60 degrees Celsius right now, which is okay. The camera has definitely overheated and I am overheating myself. What I wanted also to mention is that another factor that could be causing the issue with air temperatures is also the location of my intake air temperature sensor. It is not ideal. It does not have direct, beautiful airflow. So that might also need to be addressed. So that's an issue. The other issue that I have noticed, and it's something that I sort of expected, but I was naive and optimistic and I hoped it wouldn't happen, and I knew there was a high possibility, but I hoped, is my turbo oil return. It is not good, and it's because it's a journal bearing turbo. There's a lot of oil coming back from it. The main issue is that the turbo sits pretty low, so the angle of the return is not ideal. So we do have a bit of smoke coming from the engine. It doesn't happen very often, usually when I'm going downhill, and that's because when I'm going downhill, the position, the geometry of the oil return line is such that it wants to come back, that the oil wants to come back even more into the turbo. It's making it even easier for the oil not to drain properly back into the sump. So I hope that wasn't going to happen, but it happened. And another issue that I'm having is that when the car gets very hot in stop and go traffic like this, low throttle doesn't seem to work properly to get the car started. You need more throttle, otherwise it jerks, and I think it is because I have an exhaust leak somewhere. And when we're at the low throttle, very low vehicle speed, there isn't enough flow of exhaust gas to get rid of that, to obscure that leak to the wideband sensor. So there is a bit of a leak. I checked the log just now, and the AFRs go a bit erratic because I think when everything heats up, there's expansion, and that exhaust leak maybe gets more prominent. Maybe I have a bad V-band clamp right after a turbo. There, I have seen some traces of exhaust there. I think there might be an exhaust leak that's causing the low throttle jerk when the car is very hot. Happened again. We give it more throttle and it's gone. I feared it was not, but it's not. It never happens at full throttle. Blow off valve has been fixed. I said that already, didn't I? Anyways, fixed it. It was just the incorrect connection. I think I said it, but the camera wasn't recording. Yeah, I'm gonna maybe edit it in. Driving around in project car trying to record a video, it's not easy. You're constantly watching everything, hoping something doesn't catch on fire or fall apart or something, and you're also trying to be sensible to the camera, which I probably am not. So, the two big issues: oil return, turbo oil return, intake air temperatures will have to be addressed. How will I address them? There's many ways to do that, and there will be, of course, videos, updates. That's how a build progresses. You build something, identify issues, improve, and the build gets better and better. So those are the issues. The positives, the big positive is that this thing feels and handles, and overall it's a million times better. Let's avoid that jerk. There we go. Just a bit more throttle and it doesn't happen. We just push enough exhaust gas. Overall, the car feels so much better and so much more confidence inspiring than I honestly could ever imagine, and I'm overjoyed with that fact. I'm not afraid to push it. The boost does kick in high, as I said, 3.8, 3.9, 4. But when you're driving hard, you're above 4 anyway, so it doesn't really matter. You don't feel it. It doesn't feel like the turbo is too big 90% of the time. The other thing is that I never did an alignment, didn't feel there's a need to. I drove the car extensively through the mountains, and then I felt, okay, it just feels right, goes straight, nothing weird, nothing wrong. I just put everything back as it was, counted the number of threads on the control arms or whatever radius rods, tightened it back, and that's it. So it works really well. And the final piece of the puzzle, in addition to the engine itself, is the limited slip differential. This is addictive. I thought it wore off, but it hasn't worn off yet. It's gonna take some time. There's a bar of boost in it. Anyway, what was I going to say? I don't know. This thing just brainwashes me. I do a few pulls and what was I gonna say? Yeah, the limited slip differential. There's cops. Are they gonna pull me over? No. I keep running into cops with this car. Nah, they're not even in the car. It's just a car. Limited slip differential. That is the absolute key factor in all of this. It changed the car, it transformed the car. I think the limited slip differential plus the weight redistribution in the forms of putting the battery in the front, and I think that helped too. We have a bit more weight in the front now. I bought a big heavy Fiat spare tire, put it in there, put a toolbox in the front to add a bit more weight in the front. That plus the limited slip differential, and this car is really confidence inspiring. I have driven it through corners very hard, and it feels right. You do not feel like it's gonna just, you know, go somewhere there. I'm still not comfortable with it 100%. I'm not, you know, like perfect, but it's very, 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 very close to perfect and being 100% comfortable with it. I have still these, I think, flashbacks and memories of, there was this place in the handling where the car never felt right. When you tried to go through a corner with a lot of throttle, there was this understeer. When you tried to throttle through the corner, you would get a bit of understeer. And whenever I felt that understeer, I knew that it was to be followed up by a snap. And that, I'm really speaking when you're pushing the car, really pushing the car. When you don't try to be stupid, the car is never gonna do snap oversteer ever, unless you're crazy. But when you're trying to really push it to find the actual limits of the ancient AW11 chassis, when you try to find the limits of the chassis, you will run into this understeer, and then when you feel that understeer, it becomes a reflex. You start being afraid, and you know, now with the limited slip differential, the understeer is gone. It is nowhere in sight. All you have is, instead of getting understeer, the limited slip differential is now pushing the car into the corner. The more throttle you add, the more it pushes the car into the corner, and when you add too much throttle, this progresses slowly into a very predictable oversteer. I feel like I managed to get this car to behave like a Mazda MX-5, which is the most confidence-inspiring car I have ever driven. And I'm getting that car somewhere, this car somewhere in that territory, while it's still looking like an 80s spaceship and has a turbo and all the Toyota-ishness about it. And it's not an MX-5, but it's, you know, it's different, but it has the good points. So the handling has been an absolute revolution. I really cannot stress how much I'm impressed with that. I really didn't expect it to work this well out of the box straight after being built. So, handling. So the camera has overheated once again. I really do not want to wait anymore for it to cool down. Takes a lot of time. I have overheated as well. This is what it feels like. I don't know if you can see that. To drive a project car in the summer without any AC. This thing is boiling. I mean, probably turbo contributes to that somewhat. Anyways, overall, this is the progress update for Project Underdog. We have done more than 200 kilometers. Everything is surprisingly still together. Very impressive results. A lot better than I expected, especially in terms of handling. Also in terms of power and how the engine coped with 1 bar of boost from day one. This engine definitely received a very hard break-in, and it is doing really well so far. Fingers crossed that continues. We have the issues that we have identified, and they will be fixed in the future, and that's how Project Underdog will grow and get better and better every day. As always, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll be seeing you soon with more fun and useful stuff on the truck channel, on the D4A channel. There was another truck when I was driving. The camera was already dead. I wanted to shoot one more goodbye, you know, blow-off valve venting through the tunnel, and the same thing happened as in the last video. A truck right there in front of me just merges. Yeah. Anyways, it was a good day. Thanks all for watching.